So not Moto. I'm a C student and I've mainly only did course assignments on C and Java. That's good. That's very good. And to be honest, when people doesn't like when I say this, but when I studied at university, I did my first year was like, I don't know, 1 hour of computer a week. Yeah, we didn't touch computers. Everything was theory, even physics, electronics. Like we went very, very deep into how things works, and which I really appreciate. I really appreciate that. Like people doesn't like that side of it, but I don't like the electronics, like working day to day with the electronics. It's not something I'm passionate about, but I learned so much. And now when people talk about efficiency and things, like I understand, like, yeah, at the end of the day, freaking electrons need to move from one place to the other. That's how it goes. So I did Java to start with, which helped me a lot understand what programming is about. Okay, like I was pretty new. I'm not one of those, like, I'm happy with the place I am now with my understanding, but I was not one of those like, oh yeah, my father gave me a computer when I was 5 years old, and like, no. I went to university basically without knowing much. I knew basically, yeah, what programming was. I remember I even tried to read a book about Perl, I think it was, on the PC I had home. And I was reading the book and I was understanding, oh yeah, okay, so you have variables and you put things here and you run this, blah, blah. I understood the theory of the book, more or less. I mean, I was still young, but I was not able to install shit. I didn't understand, okay, but what do I need to install to write this text and run it? I was very stupid. So that's how I started. And then we immediately switched to C. Bam. C, memory, pointer references, like lots of stuff I already probably forgot. But that was basically we spent 3 years just with C and C++. Okay? We're implementing basically all the data structures. So yeah, that's huge. Like, even if people tell you, no, like, yeah, nowadays you should run JavaScript, ignore that shit. Like, be happy that you are learning the way they are teaching you. That's very good. So what's the deal with Swift? It's only for Apple iOS dev, or can be used for general programming too? So that's an interesting question. And we are gonna be derailed a little bit, but I think it's important to answer this question. Especially, I know that people that shows up on Twitch is not super Apple fan, so I'm very happy to answer these questions. So Swift, it's like, first of all, Swift is an open source language. The evolution of Swift, it's open. That's where we are right now. We are on the Swift forums. Here people propose us changes to Swift, like the direction of the language. It's basically moved by the community that it's using it. Okay, there is a core team that makes sure that things are sensical, of course, and the majority of that core team works at Apple, because Apple is the major force behind Swift. That there is no doubt about that. Okay. Now, don't confuse that with, which is what I hate a lot of our community does, don't confuse that with putting ideas that are from Apple, okay? Swift is not owned by Apple, okay? It's completely open source. Like, they made sure that they made a language that they didn't get into legal issues later. Like, if you want to use Swift, blah, blah, you're not going to get into legal issues with Apple, all that stuff. I don't know, and I'm not a legal expert, but they got out of the way to make clear to the world that this was an open source effort, in the same way that they help with LLDB and WebKit and all that stuff. So people think that Apple is like super against all this kind of stuff, but it's completely opposite. Like, a lot of things that run technology nowadays, like WebKit and all the stuff, they were started on open source by Apple. So of course, when Swift was released, it was mainly for Apple platforms. Like, the goal they had is like, we need something modern that helps us replace Objective-C, which is the language that Apple platforms have been using for a while. And so that was the main goal. That's why in the beginning people was a lot of obscure. It's like, oh no, that's only for Apple. No, that's not true. Okay, since the open source release, you can use Swift on Linux, for example, and you are asking explicitly for general programming too, like solving algorithms and creating server backends. Solving algorithms is something that you can do with Swift much better than with the two languages that you mentioned. So it's huge. Like, and if you want to learn like kind of data structures and stuff like that, it's super useful, in my opinion, to take a look at doing them with Swift. Of course, if your university is gonna make you do it in C, that's perfectly fine. But you can translate a lot of the understanding you will have from one side to the other. Because yes, in Swift, as I was saying just now, like we have memory safety. So Swift eliminates a lot of memory and safety, but it eliminates it not in the way that Java does, which is like you have these objects and they do things that you don't want, and memory it's managed magically with a garbage collection, blah, 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 all that stuff. No, on Swift you still need to understand how things go, you know? You still need to understand the difference between a class, a struct, you know, a class is basically a pointer and it's a reference type and all that stuff. So it's not as magical, but it's modern and you can do a lot of things with it. In practical terms, solving algorithms, yes. Like everything that you are doing on a CS course, you will do it much better with Swift. In my opinion, they should replace Java with Swift. You know, like still keep C, because I think learning C is fundamental to understand how things really work, okay? But I think Java it's completely, like it's unnecessary. And please don't replace Java with JavaScript because it's even worse. But creating server backends, yes, there is a lot of effort on that. It's not as, it's not a mainstream yet as I would like personally, but you can see that the focus is there. Like Swift has a focus area that is the Swift server group. So these are people from different companies. What did I click? Oops, sorry. What is it? Swift server. So it's from different companies. Like they basically, it's like the Swift core team is focused on the Swift language itself, and this group focuses like, okay, what we need from Swift to be able to shine on the server. And you can see, like, of course there is people from Apple, because Apple has Apple develop an asynchronous framework that it's called Neo, and it's basically what it's powering a lot of the server ecosystem. But then you can see people from MongoDB, from Amazon, you know, Vapor, it's like a web server framework for this. So you can see there is a lot of movement here. Recently we had, so basically like right now we have also support for Windows. So there is a Windows installer and you're going to start developing things on Windows. Of course, we're talking about the language here, okay? Don't be confused because people is like, oh, you cannot do anything. Well, one thing is the language and what that allows you to do. And the other thing, very differently, is can you build the full UI application? Well, for that you need the UI framework. And you need to hook into the system and all that stuff. And I'm not sure what's the status for that on Windows. Okay, I don't think it's that far-fetched that we're gonna get that soon. But at least now we have the full language and libraries running on Windows. So if you want to do a CLI, for example, or something on Windows, you should be able to. Backends that run on Linux or Amazon on serverless and all that stuff, done. So Swift, it's not only for Apple. Okay, that's basically the summary.